hurricane, a tidal wave. It seems perfect, life looks brilliant. Give me more of this. I'm out of control, about to blow, and I've been caught in the undertow. So toxic, but I can't get enough. You're burying me, burying me. Yeah, you're burying me, burying me. You've got me hypnotized. Push me out of myself. You've got me hypnotized. I can see, I can hear, going crazy by the light. It's got me hypnotized. You've got me hypnotized. And get you out of my head again. Is it wrong? Is it right? It's like I've won my final war without a fight. I'm out of control, about to blow. I've been caught in the undertow. Toxic, but I can't get enough. You bury me, bury me. I know you bury me, bury me. You've got me hypnotized. Push me out of myself. You've got me hypnotized. I can see, I can hear, going crazy by the light. It's got me hypnotized. You've got me hypnotized. And get you out of my head. Get you out of my head. Hurricane.
But you make it all worse. Every time you hear these words, I'll be down the road, cause I got the odds are better on my side. Why don't you try to be wise? I'm calling you cry. I never wanted to be alive, just to feel like I'm fading. And though my heart beats a beat down, I've pressed the list just to take you. Don't lead the way, don't leave a say that I drown with a child's play in the rain. I feel like I'm fading.
Now, 4 great ways to lose weight with thrifty new plan.
Is there water in your hairspray? There shouldn't be. Water takes the shape out of your hairdo. You need the water-free hairspray. Self-styling Adorn. Adorn's water-free formula puts shape into your hair and keeps it there. Actually holds up to twice as long. So put shape into your hairdo and keep it there with the water-free hairspray. Self-styling Adorn.
Well, how do you do, sir? I understand this is your first taste of Carling's Black Label beer.
Yeah.
And, sir, what is your reaction?
Well, I like it.
Good. Perhaps you can be more specific. How would you describe the flavor?
I like it.
Good. Light,
Yeah.
dry,
Yeah.
and what else?
I like it.
Good. And the quality of Black Label?
Oh, I like it.
Good. Would you say it was high quality?
Yeah.
Or top quality?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's premium quality at the popular price.
I like that, too.
Good. And now, sir, see all those people out there?
Where?
You, sir, have been co-starring on TV with everybody's favorite Carling's Black Label beer.
Oh, you don't say.
Mabel, Black Label.
Hi, Mabel.
It's a dark, cold world out there. There's a time to live and a time for a man to die. Rednecks with white faces don't go putting on down. Rednecks with white faces, they ain't no rodeo clowns.
And boom, just like that, it's Thursday night, and you know what that means. It's party time with us, the Video Bros. I'm Bobby Munson, and the man beside me, you know him, he's the man with the angelic voice. He is Papa Smokes! Papa Smokes, happy Thursday. How you doing, brother?
Woo, I'm doing great, Munson. It's Thursday, it's Ring Respect Radio night, and my favorite time of all, Trip Through the Territories night. Been reading, been studying, been watching a bunch of matches. I'm excited.
It's been far too long since we did a trip through the territories. We've had a lot of stuff going down here on the show as of late. A lot of great stuff. In fact, like last week, we just had that banger trivia night. What a night that was, Papa Smoke. Before that, all the great shows. We got a lot of stuff coming up as well, too. Like next Thursday night, Papa Smokes, joining us right here on Ring Respect Radio. It's the other voice of Prairie Pro Wrestling, JG Muller, for the very first time. We're going to be talking to JG next week. And I believe, Papa Smokes, little birdie might have told me we might be doing a little review of our friends SPW Battle for Gold next Thursday night, as that is now available on YouTube. And coming up after that, I don't know, Papa Smokes, we also got to talk some Cold Fury, Chaotix Cold Fury, now available on YouTube as well, too. Not sure, have you gotten around to watching SPW or Cold Fury yet?
No, I have not. I want to have both fresh in my mind before we do the reviews, so no spoilers at this point, Munson.
None at all, Papa Smokes. I have watched both through. A lot of stuff to talk about and unfold from both shows. Can't wait to be able to review those with you, Papa Smokes. And again, you know, there's a big show coming this Saturday, Papa Smokes. I don't know how we want to handle this. If we want to wait down the road, if we want to watch it and pre-record a special episode review or something like that along those lines, maybe even this Tuesday we could pre-record something if you're off on Tuesday or something like that. Because Papa Smokes, MLW's Battle Riot is this Saturday night, and I feel we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't cover the Battle Riot.
Definitely so. One of my favorite shows and concepts from that company, and it always kind of leads up to some major title considerations and such after the Battle Riot. So, yeah, we watched an MLW show recently and enjoyed it, so I think the Battle Riot could be a real winner.
I think you can too. A lot of big names that are being added to that Battle Riot match as well too. So yeah, it is a stacked card, Papa Smokes. I think, again, it comes out on YouTube this Saturday. I say we watch it. Maybe Tuesday, if you have a free hour, we'll do a pre-record. We won't go live. We'll do a pre-record and we'll release it as an additional Ring Respect Radio episode.
So much stuff to work on, eh? It's a problem that's a good one to have, isn't it?
It's a really good problem to have because, again, you know, we're going to be wanting to talk all about another company coming up very soon. In fact, our own company, Papa Smokes, because on Saturday, April the 26th, 2025, live in Saskatoon at the Cosmos Senior Center, Prairie Pro Wrestling presents Triple Combat. Yes, the seats are all sold out. And I'll tell you, Papa Smokes, the advanced tickets for the standing room only that are on pre-sale right now, they're going fast too, brother. This might be one of the first times where PPW could officially be sold out before we get to the doors. We are heading on that trajectory right now. And speaking of Prairie Pro Wrestling, of course, they had to get their weekly dig in. Hello, gents. Papa Smokes, you're looking debonair as always. And Munson, well, you're there. And Basser in the house, PPW. Woo! Yes, evening, my boys. Evening to you too, Bass. Hopefully you and Lil Bass have already pre-ordered your tickets for PPW. Again, the standing room only pre-sales are on sale. Bass, if you need, reach out to PPW. No, you don't use Messenger. Reach out to you-know-who that takes care of tickets that you have contact information for, and you'll be able to pre-buy your tickets for the show there, Brand. We're doing it. You can send the email money transfer now for tickets for standing room only. And like I tell you, they're going fast. People want PPW action again, Papa Smokes.
Oh, the momentum just continues to build. I'm so happy with the way it's going. The PPW Nation prove over and over again that they're the best fans in all wrestling. And that's a strong thing to say, but I fully believe it by the commitment and the love that our fans show us every time. Love it, people. Keep coming. Keep enjoying the shows.
I mean, you can't go wrong. We're giving you that triple threat ladder match for the PPW tag team titles. It's going to be chaos.
Oh, man.
Who knows where we're going to be at in this war between Michael Allen, Richard Clark, our champion, and LS. Like, I think things are unfolding, Pop Smokes. It's going to be chaos. Like Bass says, he's on it. He's going to get his tickets just like everybody else should. Grab what you can. Make sure you come out. Bring the whole family. Of course, they don't mind a little violence and a little curse words. They'll have a good old family time at people. But now on to the meat of the matter, Papa Smokes, because we got to make sure that we keep the show to a nice lean hour-ish type thing. I always like doing that. You know, people like watching stuff that's in that hour zone. You know, the attention spans lean better towards that hour. So we're going to deliver as much as we can about the third biggest promotion during the territory times for the great nation of Canada. And I say great nation of Canada because this is the only time I'm even going to step up and be political at all. We're not for sale. We're proud of our nation. And God damn it, we have a rich history and you ain't fucking stealing it from us. So here we go. We are talking about the Montreal territory, Papa Spokes. And in particular, we're going to be a little heavier focused on the 1980s during the Lutte Internationale, I believe is the way it's pronounced.
Not bad, Bunsen. Yeah, not bad for a non-bilingual Canadian.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. But yes, we are going to be talking about the territory based out of Montreal, which again, despite the fact that probably the most prominent time being from about 1980 to 1987 with under that moniker, there's a lot more history that goes about it, Papa Smokes. And that's why I'm going to turn it over to you, my man. Bring us some of that rich history of the Canadian territory of Quebec and pro wrestling.
For sure. Wanted to say something about Montreal first for any of our international listeners that aren't familiar with the country, or sorry, the city. It is Canada's second largest city next to Toronto, which is in the neighboring province of Ontario. Its population at the core is just under 2 million people, but including the surrounding area and suburbs, it's just over 4 million. So not a massive city on a global scale, but for Canada, that's a pretty darn big city. And it's been around for a long time. One of the first places settled in Canada. And it is also, including the province of Quebec, very bilingual, very many French speakers there, but most of the French speakers, or quite a lot of them, also speak English. So very bilingual. You'll find if you go down there, the people in Quebec or in Montreal much prefer if you speak French. They might be a little bit rude to you if you don't, but they will understand you in English as well. This will come up when we get into the wrestling a little bit because bilingualism very important to being a wrestler at this time too. If you don't speak French as well as English, you ain't going to get over in Quebec nearly so well as you might.
Unless you're trying to be the foreign heel that comes in not wanting to learn their language, then you might draw the heat that you're looking for, at least there, Pop Smokes.
Oh yeah, and we'll see some examples of that as we go along too. But Montreal and the Quebec area have been having professional wrestling matches since circa 1890. So before even the turn of the century, there were promoters running wrestling and boxing shows at small venues around the city. Not much organization to it, but basically throwing evenings of fights wherever they could to make a couple of bucks here and there. And it kind of, as many of the territories we've examined thus far, in the early days, there wasn't really that organization that tied companies together, or there weren't companies that ran for multiple years and built rosters and everything. It was more scattered. It was more one promoter doing something here for a little bit, then he's out of the business, then someone else notices that there aren't wrestling matches being thrown, so they throw them. And it was just kind of a sporadic thing for a long time, as it was in many areas of, let's just say, North America at this point. We talked about our own home province here of Saskatchewan. It was very much like that until some companies gained ground in the 70s and 80s. Same thing with Montreal.
Yeah, and again, we've talked heavily about the Montreal territory in particular, and I'm gonna try to note this at the just before the 16-minute mark to try to tag in the link to the video up in the top corner of the screen here for anybody interested. Papa Smokes and I did that deep dive on the career of Andre the Giant in particular, and we have done heavy conversations about Andre's time in Montreal, which actually even predates the 1980 to 1987s that we'll go so heavily into here and find out about his connection to that particular time in pro wrestling history.
For sure. And just to talk about Andre for a second, he's very pivotal in the history of Montreal wrestling, obviously because he was a worldwide star, very, very famous throughout the wrestling world. Came to Montreal when he was still under the name Andre Roussimoff, but he was the Giant Roussimoff or whatever. And Andre had come to do work in some of the bigger cities, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, the Los Angeles, Toronto, that sort of thing. But when Andre got to Montreal, this is where he felt comfortable. Montreal, as I said, very bilingual, very French speaking, and it's a beautiful city. It's an old school city in its architecture. Many people call it the most European city in North America because it really is like little Paris in a way. So when Andre Roussimoff first came there to work, or first came to North America to work as a wrestler, he was very attracted to Montreal because he didn't speak English so great. But there's a city that speaks French all the time. It values good restaurants, fine wines, and nightlife. This was right up Andre's alley.
Yeah, it definitely was. Sorry for the little bit of a distraction. I was just giving the instruction to Bass on how to get those tickets to Prairie Pro Wrestling, but just making sure everybody's looked after here, Papa Spokes. But
always working, Munson.
Always working, never a day off. Of course, that's why you and I are here religiously every single Thursday night, delivering the goods on Ring Respect Radio. But yes, Papa Spokes. Do we want to go in depth about the 60s and 70s in Montreal, or are we going to go right into the heart and the meat of it here with Lutte Internationale kind of thing? Where are your notes at anyway? I should have double checked that with you.
No, I think that's a smart idea because, like I say, there wasn't a whole lot of tenuousness or a whole bunch of organization or any one company that ran the city as far as bookings for pro wrestling goes. There were two big companies and one big promoter throughout all that time, throughout the 60s and 70s, which was Jack Britton. He was the man around Montreal. He was the guy that really laid down a lot of the foundation for Montreal being a big wrestling city, having a large core audience. So Jack Britton, very, very important man to this whole thing. He set up his company, All Star Wrestling, and then he had competition called Grand Prix Wrestling, whose promoter was Emile Dupree, who was a pretty famous wrestler in his day. Those two had been the top promotions. And like we've seen in a lot of other territories, when there was more than one company, they fought tooth and nail, and there were betrayals and lies and backstabbings and all the rest of that stuff, which kind of led to the formation of Lutte Internationale, which was the creation of Frank Valois, who was a former heel manager in Quebec wrestling, André the Giant, the aforementioned, and Gino Brito, who was also a famous wrestler in Montreal and Quebec. Those three pooled their money and started the promotion Lutte Internationale, International Wrestling. And that's when they got their TV deal. That's what they called the TV show. Of course, there would be a French language version and an English language version with the commentary changed just a little bit for the Western and non-Quebecois audience, the non-French speaking audience. So again, there's a little more work involved in that, but you can't alienate those French speaking fans in Quebec. They will not attach themselves to your product if you don't provide French. So once again, announcers, commentators, and wrestlers and ring announcers all had to be able to speak French, speak French very fluently and very well in order to get over with those fans. And that's just like a lot of other areas of business and recreation in Quebec. Pardon me. You got to be able to speak that French or they're not going to bond with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is why they took to Andre so well and why he became such a big part of the history of Montreal wrestling, not only being, an investor or a partner in this particular company, but his appearances. He comes from France, he comes over. So even though there's a slight difference, and we've mentioned this before, between French Canadian and French speaking languages, you're going to have the general concepts there. A lot of the stuff does translate over still. So Andre fit in perfectly there already because of that French background. It was the English portion that didn't come immediately for Andre either, though, and that's why at first he would have translators there to translate between kind of thing. But because he was able to communicate with a lot of the boys there and stuff like that, that's what brought him in and did so well for him there. Not only was he attraction, but he also had the language down as well too. So the people grew to love him as well as the workers there.
Oh, very much so. And imagine what the promoters thought of that. We can get one of the top wrestlers in the world. He's a giant, so he's an attraction. We can sell a whole show based on him being there, and he speaks French. It's absolutely perfect. They must have thought they'd died and gone to heaven working with Andre, who eventually wanted to live in Montreal and did, and made that his home base in Canada. So whenever he worked for Vince Sr. down in New York and in Chicago, and he did shots with AWA, and he did shots all over the place in North America, his home base was Montreal. He lived there because he loved the language, the culture, the nightlife, and of course, that fine, fine wine.
He sure did. We know all the stories about it, and again, we could talk forever about Andre. It's cool to think, like, going back to this territory, like one of the big three, and the big three were considered this Maple Leaf Wrestling out of Toronto, and of course Calgary Stampede. But again, this isn't one of the ones you hear regularly brought up amongst wrestling well, I shouldn't say historians. Again, not so much about around modern day wrestling fans. A lot of them will know Maple Leaf Wrestling because of the revival. A lot of them are familiar with Stampede Wrestling, have heard about it because it has been mentioned so many times in modern day professional wrestling. But with Montreal, not so much. You don't hear it as much, but it was huge pop. So they drew big crowds, big numbers, big gates all the time for these guys, and brought in a lot of talent, not just utilizing great talent in Montreal and the general area, but also bringing in world-renowned talent at the same time too. And they put on some fantastic matches, and the television production as well. Like, they had good TV for this time in professional wrestling.
Yeah, very much so. And they started to use, they were in the Rosemont district, so they used the Paul Sauvé Center, which was their main venue. It's got a capacity of roughly 4,000. So it's a pretty decent sized building. They probably didn't sell that out so much. That's quite a few people, 4,000, but for some of the big shows that they did, they would have been packing them in for that too. And the first show that they ran at the Paul Sauvé Center, they wanted to bring it in big, so they got Hulk Hogan and put him against André the Giant. This is in 1980, so well before the WrestleMania feuds and the first Body Slam and all that. They not only did their first show with him, but they were taking that match on tour because, again, Andre is not only a huge attraction, but Hulk Hogan, I can remember the first time I saw him when I was a kid in the early 80s. He's an attraction. He looked so good, and he was young and so gigantic. Imagine that match coming to your town. The sheer size of both guys would really just draw a crowd alone. Never mind all the supporting talent they had on some of those cards. So really starting off with a huge bang with the Hogan versus Andre, which would be a feud, like I say, that they would shop all around their territory, all around the province, many, many, many times until the WWF started protecting both Andre and Hogan more because they didn't want them out there doing too many matches and sort of getting oversaturated in the wrestling market.
And again, you're talking about a time too when a lot of fans are aware of Hogan spending time in Japan and stuff like that, and working with a lot of the guys over there and everything, and having a complete, not a completely different style, but a style different to what would become synonymous with Hulkamania and that run, as well as Andre though too. Being, you talk about Andre being an attraction, he wasn't just an attraction. When Andre, like, we know Pop Smokes, we've talked about it in depth, but the capability of this man in a professional wrestling ring when he was still able to, before the gigantism and the overgrowth started to happen. This was a different Andre than it was in 1980. It must have been 85 or 86, I believe, when he had that match at WrestleMania 3. We're talking about a different Andre the Giant, one that is a lot more skilled in that ring. So we're talking about a lot more better combat type matchup between these two gladiators. Hello to SGG, by the way, he joined us here. Remember how he spent 400 days in Japan just because he moved forward. Yeah, I know, he's a time traveler. I love that one. I mean, that's one of his best bullshit lies that I've ever heard. So it's great. Again, we going on about these guys. These weren't the only two guys they had in this territory. There's a lot of these guys, like we're talking about a young Dino Bravo. There's another name that, like modern fans might have heard of, might know about. And I mean, we're talking about a completely different Dino Bravo than we would see later on when he move on to work for Vince McMahon in the WWF. We're talking about a very clean cut babyface Dino Bravo that graced this time. This was the hero guy, the real blue chipper of Lutte International at the time.
Yeah, very much so. And Lutte International had wanted to take a booking style that is very much like a lot of the other territories that we've looked at too, except that in Quebec it's just slightly different. They had the booking strategy of Quebec versus the world. So they wanted to have their homegrown stars, their French-speaking guys, battle against stars from other places in the world who would be like the foreign menace, so to speak, who would come in and try and push around the Quebec wrestlers and push around the Montreal wrestlers, and of course getting some heat and some good matches out of that. So from that, they needed a top guy, they needed a top babyface, and they picked young Dino Bravo, who really was something at the time. I know that, as you mentioned already, WWE-centric people will remember his run in the WWE at the end of his career. He was huge. He was on the juice. He was lifting tons of weights. He was kind of strongman Dino Bravo at that time, and he just didn't really get over in the WWE all that much, even though he had so many gifts. But it was a little bit of the French accent, and he didn't have the same kind of charisma that went over with the different audiences and all that. But as you said, as a younger star, as a babyface, aerial style, wrestling, good-looking young kid, he was gold, and that's the guy they picked. They also had other prospects to think of too, homegrown talent, and one of those was, of course, we would see them in the WWF later too, the Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond, who were the sons of Jacques Rougeau Sr., who had been a famous Quebec wrestler and promoter. And then they had an uncle, Johnny Rougeau, as well, who had been a wrestler. So again, we see another formula that we've seen in some of the other territories that we've covered on this show, including WCCW from Dallas, Texas, and Stampede from Calgary. Get the family involved. Make it a family business. And if you've got sons and daughters who want to be in the business, get them working out. Get them practicing their trade. Get them looking good, talking good, and get them on TV so that you can start benefiting from that. Excuse me. And the Rougeau brothers, the sons of Jacques Sr., were perfect for that. Well-built, big, muscular, handsome guys that the fans are going to take to immediately. Speaking some nice French, doing good wrestling, trained by the best guys in Quebec, and that was going to be their oyster. That was going to be their blue chip, and those guys were going to be their top baby faces, and they were for a long time. Underneath Bravo and Gino Brito and some of those more veteran stars that had been there for a while, the Rougeau brothers were going to really be the sort of jewel in the rough there.
Yeah, exactly. Another one thing I want to bring up here in a moment, Papa Spokes, and it's going to tie into a question STG's trying to ask here, and I'm going to bring that question up. But before I do, STG, your previous question to that, I think is a good topic for once we're done the trip through the territories portion. We'll finish off the show with it. So remind me, we do have a great couple of questions from STG to ask at the end of the program here, Papa Spokes. But this one in particular, STG asking, excluding the current Quebec talent, who were some of your favorite Quebec-based stars? And to me, that ties into another family that graced the Montreal territory as well, too. And that's the Vachon family. A big fan of the Vachons, really like the work of the Vachons. I've said it many times before. And for me personally, I would have to not maybe narrow down to just one. I enjoy the Vachon family in general. A lot of the wrestling families, I really do enjoy.
Oh, very much so. And you can tell that when it's in the family, the kids that grew up in the business just have it all soaked in. Just it comes so naturally to them when their dads and mums and uncles and aunts and everybody were in the business. Just like young Eddie Guerrero and just like the young Von Erichs and the young Hart brothers, you can't help but soak it all in. And when you're learning the skills of a business and of an art like wrestling, the kids just pick up on it so quickly. They get obsessed with it, and then they get really, really good at it. The Vachon family is a great example of that too, because they had 2 and maybe even 3 generations of that family that were wrestlers, promoters. Vivienne Vachon was one of the first lady refs back in the 60s and became a wrestler, quite a good ladies wrestler as well too, but down in Montreal, breaking barriers even with the ladies in that family, and just everything they touched turned to gold pretty much as well. And they were involved in some of those wrestling company feuds before Lutte Internationale, but the Vachons made their mark all through the wrestling world for sure.
Yeah, and yes, STG, the family that Luna is from as well too, and Luna is fantastic. Maybe ask me on Sunday point of view when we got a little bit of time if you want to hear my story about when I met Luna Vachon. And there's a Luna Vachon documentary that was just recently made. It's actually playing very, very small select indie theaters across the country right now. I think it's just wrapping up in Calgary at the moment, and I believe that there was a showing out in Ontario as well too. Very curious to find a way to get our hands on that documentary, Papa Spokes. I would love to watch that and review that again. Luna did a great job annoying me, but her work was so good. She always wanted to push. She's phenomenal, man. Like again, get me on a roll on Sunday. We will talk the Luna Vachon story that I've got for you because it's really good. I don't want to eat up too much time on this particular episode for that story anyway.
Can I say one thing about Luna first, though? Is another thing I admire about her is that she grew up in the wrestling family. I think Mad Dog Vachon is her uncle, and Paul the Butcher Vachon is her dad, I do believe. But she was a beautiful young lady. She could have been like all the other lady wrestlers and went with her look, went with her beauty or whatever. But she saw that it's harder to stand out that way when there are other good-looking and beautiful lady wrestlers. So what did she do? She went the route that her dad and uncles went. I'm going to look ugly. I'm going to look crazy. I'm going to look mean and savage kind of thing. And that was one of the things that made her so unique, is that she went against the grain. She didn't go for the glam, beautiful look. She went for the insane lunatic look. And look what that did for her.
She had it all, but in an era where they weren't ready for her, kind of said. I think it just more falls into the category of women's wrestling just wasn't highlighted as much during that era. It's not they had quality women's wrestling. Here's the thing: before it kind of got bastardized with the Attitude Era, there was quality women's wrestling, especially in the early '90s when you had Alundra Blaze as your champion, Bull Nakano doing work over there, Lalani Kai, Luna Vachon, and this is just past the era of people like Sensational Sherry. I gotta say a quick hello to our boy Bobby Stats in the house. Bobby, thanks for coming in.
Hey, Bobby.
Getting sidetracked, missing you here, brother. But yeah, no, I think Luna was I think it was just more so it wasn't a highlight of the time or anything like that, but she found a way to still get over. I mean, memorable in my mind. And again, we could do, and maybe we should, once we get a chance to get our hands on that documentary, do a whole dedication to the career of Luna Vachon. I would love to do that sometime, Pop Smokes. But getting back on track with the Montreal territory. Again, I'm going to throw the floor back to you again to go back to where you were in the notes here. Talk about some more of the stars and the rivalries we had. And then we're going to be going over to a matchup. I did find the one. It's Ron and Jimmy Garvin versus the Rougeau brothers. We're going to watch that tag match here shortly.
Sweet. Okay, and I watched a bunch of episodes of the TV show. Other stars we liked. I was going to bring up the classic stars from the past. Like the first big Quebecois star was Yvon Robert, and he was huge. He's back in the 40s and 50s, the Luthez kind of period. Then the next guy was Edouard Carpentier. You might have seen pictures of him, and he would fit in today's wrestling perfectly. Like he was way ahead of his time. He had the real good muscular physique, but he was super technical in his wrestling and super aerial as well. And he was one of those guys that frustrated the heel with superior skill and superior athleticism all the time. And you know that Lutte International would have loved to use Edouard Carpentier, but he was a little too long in the tooth at that point. So they had him as a commentator and such, still giving the fans one of their old favorites. But I was going to say, watching some episodes of Les Étoiles de Lutte, you know what that means, Munson? The Stars of Wrestling. That was the TV show. They had, I just wanted to say for humor's sake, one of the heels that they had come in that sort of the world versus Quebec kind of booking angle they had was England's own Billy Robinson. Now, you know him too, a technical superstar from the 70s and 80s, doing that British world of sports style, similar to what Lord Regal and a few other people would do after that. And he had as his manager Lord Alfred Hayes. Now, you WWF fans remember him, of course, of promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Fuck you,
you know that guy.
You fucking nailed that. That was good.
I've only heard that a million times, but he used to be a wrestler and used to be a good manager. And he trained his British accent to be that real posh, real snobby sounding, rich guy British accent. So that pissed off the fans. But Lord Al Hayes could also speak French, and he would speak French in that hoity-toity British accent. And boy, did that piss off the fans. And that's extremely funny, even to non-French speakers. You can tell what he's doing very easily. He's bastardizing the French accent and making it into that posh British accent. Oh, you can hear the TV crowd just going nuts when he does that.
Yeah, again, it's such an interesting thing to see a lot of these people out of the elements of what I grew up with. And again, like I know that voice as well too. I've heard it a million times. Every Coliseum video VHS tape I ever owned had that on it somewhere. So, you know, I get that, but so you get this image of that version of Lord Alfred Hayes, and then you go back and watch these TV programs, like you're saying, it's like, man, was he good at that? Was he ever good at irritating that crowd like nobody's business? Like he was on point with everything he was doing there.
Oh yeah. Very, very smart. Very, very smart. And one of the other wrestlers, just to get back to STG's question about Quebec talent, one guy we can't forget, or a couple guys we can't forget to mention, one being Joe LeDuc, the French Canadian lumberjack, who was a huge, mean, stiff wrestler who did a lot of, before it was known as hardcore, a lot of blood and guts kind of matches. You and I have watched that scene from Memphis where is it the stomper that breaks the concrete block that's on Leduc's head with the sledgehammer, and it kind of goes wrong, like, and splits open Leduc's head so bad. Leduc doesn't care, like, he continues on with his promo and everything, even though he's pretty badly injured. He's also the guy that did the blood oath and cut his arm on TV with that super sharp axe.
Yep.
Leduc was a madman and very, very convincing as a heel, and scared a lot of young fans. Maybe not all of them were young either. He was scaring fans by how big and how mean he was. Another guy I wanted to bring up who came from doing jobs in Quebec and worked his way up, all the way up to world champion, was Rick Martel.
Yeah.
And again, people remember him as a mid-card guy in WWE at the end of his career. But Rick Martel, arrogance, spraying the perfume everywhere. But Martel was once again, great body, handsome guy, spoke French, very nice, very friendly, and the fans absolutely loved him. The ladies loved him, and all the fans loved him. So this guy got to be one of the big, big wrestlers in Quebec. And then he had actually bought into Lutte Internationale, had bought a piece of that. And then when things went down, he went to the AWA with Vern Gagne and ended up being world champion there back when the AWA was one of the big three federations that had a world champion. So Martel took his humble roots in Quebec and took it all the way to the top.
Yeah, he's another great Canadian legend that doesn't get brought up enough.
So great.
Again.
Yeah.
Another one that we could probably do an entire episode on. And we say hello to Astrid joining us in the house. Thank you for joining us on Ring Respect Radio, Astrid. Appreciate you. Astrid, who was here competing last week in the ladies trivia night. We had a hell of a blast. Bobby also mentioned in Papa Smokes that your good personal friend, Mr. Thomas, has officially been named as being in that Battle Riot match this Saturday. So looking forward to seeing Mr. T go into that match and see what he can get done. But we'll get to that. Let's watch the match. How about this, Papa? So we can sit here and we can talk all day about these great stars and everything like that. But how about we go ahead? I'm going to pop this up on the screen, and we are going to watch that match of Ron and Jimmy Garvin versus the Rougeau brothers. And I think then after that, we'll go to some final thoughts from you, Papa Smokes. Then we'll go back to that question that SGD had earlier to see out the rest of the show, if that works for everybody.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Here, we're going to crank some volume, and here we go. Match time. I mean, that the audio recording is not the greatest. Neither is the footage. There was a lot more that were a lot more crisp than this too. The uploads that are on YouTube. There's some very, very good video that's up there from the television stuff.
Oh, Heaven's Precious is with them. This is fantastic. Oh boy, Precious started that one.
She's the one that doesn't get brought up very often too when it comes to people talking about professional wrestling history very often.
that air purifier in his eyes, and take it from me, that kind of thing stinks.
Oh, speaking of spraying perfume, we just had a perfume spraying incident from Jimmy Garvin here. Right on.
In the meantime, Raymond Rougeau getting into it with one of the Garvins and acquitting himself well, but both Rougeaus, or I should say both Garvins, on top of Raymond Rougeau in the center of the ring. Jacques Rougeau Jr. still fighting to gain some vision. Look at that. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin attacking Jacques Rougeau Jr. Senior. And Jacques Rougeau Sr. coming in the ring right now.
Oh, we got Jacques Rougeau Senior mixing it up with them.
Oh.
Jacques Rougeau still in
Awesome. Listen to the fans just roaring at this point. That's their old favorite Jacques Senior coming back for a couple of punches.
And two referees in this encounter as well, too.
This is ridiculous wrestling fans. Jacques Rougeau coming to the aid of his two champion sons, Jacques Rougeau Jr. and Raymond Rougeau.
Oh no.
Jacques Rougeau in a Boston crab by Jimmy,
Oh my.
and Ronnie Garvin coming off the
Senior just took a good beat down there.
Look at this. Jacques Rougeau Jr. all bloodied up in the corner and blinded Ray Rougeau out of it. Look at it, Mill. Jacques Rougeau Jr. does
Oh, we got blood already. This is a pretty big match. This must be one of the penultimate matches of this feud between the Garvins and the Rougeaus, perhaps, because they're really starting off fast here. Even Senior's been in the ring already.
A black day for professional wrestling, I must tell you. But if that happened, I was there. I can tell you one thing, Milt. The two Rougeaus were out of it the way they ganged up on Jacques Rougeau Sr. Out of nowhere, they came, Boston crabbed him, and then hit him off the top rope with a knee in the back of the neck. That's where they almost crippled Jacques Rougeau Sr. for life. The man was hurt, and Jacques Rougeau Jr. helpless. So Raymond helpless. To put it in chronological order, the match had not even started. You can see that Jacques Rougeau Jr. does not even have his robe off. They lined up in the center of the ring. Precious came after Jacques Rougeau, started yelling at him. Ronnie Garvin viciously, cowardly attacked Jacques Rougeau Jr. by spraying that air spray right in his eyes. It blinded him. At which point, both Garvins attacked Raymond Rougeau, rendered him relatively helpless. Jacques Rougeau, as any father would, attack. They're back. There it is.
Here come the heels again.
Administer more punishment to the Rougeaus. Despicable. That's why
Man, heat they're getting right now, too.
But a Garvin driver after all that. And Jacques Rougeau Sr., one of the great names. Look, still working on Jacques Rougeau Sr. One of the great names in the annals of professional wrestling. Dislocated his shoulder, still pounds on him. The Garvins are just.
Oh, I love the commentary here. They're putting this over really well.
Yeah.
That the Garvins are going to get theirs. And look at that. Again, Ronnie Garvin off the.
And they also mentioned that this is they never rang the bell. This never turned into a match. Like this was supposed to happen, and all this chaos unfolded in the midst of it.
He was totally blinded by that spray in the eyes. Jacques Rougeau Sr., one of the great champions in the annals of professional wrestling, came to the aid of his son, as would his father. Technically, he didn't belong in that ring, but what would you do when you see your own two sons being blinded, being cut up, full of blood, laying on the floor? Any good father would have done the same thing Jacques Rougeau Sr. did. Jump in the ring and defend the honor of the family and the son. Unfortunately, they Pearl Harbored him from behind. They got him down, and they really hurt him because I was there, Mill. And I can tell you, Jacques Rougeau had a dislocated shoulder. The two Rougeaus were pounded to the ground, but I'll tell you, they're not out. They're going to be back. Nothing can keep the Rougeaus down forever. Well, I'll tell you something.
All right, so that's that. But it's very interesting how they played that out. Again, having an opportunity to prolong the feud by not having the match ever take place. Absolute chaos unfolds, and you build that tension, you build that story even further. And that's the thing that a lot of people maybe modernly don't know or grasp about wrestling booking. It's okay to have a non-contest. It's okay to have a disqualification, and it's okay to have a count-out finish. We get upset about it when it happens on, say, a pay-per-view or something like that. But this was long before times of doing pay-per-views or pay-per-views being a big thing in wrestling or premium live events. These were just big stadium shows or big, wrestling shows that were put on, and those types of finishes were perfect because you didn't want that rivalry to come to a head in this particular town. You know, it might be traveling to the next territory or to some other promotion that needs to put on that big match. They need that headliner even more so than what the previous territory did. So you have a match end in that way, and then you bring it back, or else maybe that wasn't the draw. Maybe you knew that you were only doing a certain size stadium. You don't want to have the big blow off at that size stadium. You want to wait until you've got that double sized crowd, the big gate, the big money, the thing that everyone's going to be talking about. The newspapers are going to be writing about and the magazines are going to have mentioned. You wanted to do the big payoff with the matchup that unfolds after you built that heat, built that rivalry. And that's what a lot of places, especially in the territory days, and a lot of the ones we talked about out of Canada were excellent at doing, was making sure that they allowed those big rivalries to carry on and continue to draw big money for them.
For sure, you said it all right there. It's all about building heat. People say wrestling is all about rematches, and it is, because you start your angle with one match and you show the fans something, get them invested with it. Then you take that match on your little tour wherever else you're playing, and in Quebec they did the same thing. Of course, doing their tours in the summertime because none of the venues, the arenas were always busy with hockey in the winter. That's another Canadian thing that's even bigger than wrestling. But at any rate, you would take your little angle, your tour around, do that match for the fans. This is also before the internet. People aren't reading the dirt sheets and comparing results or anything like that. And you build that heat. And who knows what happened with this particular match, that particular night. Maybe somebody's injured and they don't want to do the whole match, so they just did it like that. Stuff also happens on wrestling cards. Sometimes you run out of time. And back in those days, you didn't want your main event to run out of time, but some of those buildings had the 11 o'clock noise curfew and stuff like that. You had to be done. They would shut you down promptly at 11 o'clock, even if you weren't done. So who knows what the booker had in mind. Maybe this was the idea the entire time, to just, we're not even going to let the match get going. These heels are so dastardly that they're just going to jump our guys, jump the gun. We'll get the old man, the hero, to jump in and have them beat him up too. And now imagine the heat that's going to be coming into the big money match when all the people are there.
Oh, exactly. And again, it was well done. I want to go to you for any final thoughts on this territory, anything that you still had in your notes that you wanted to talk about here, Papa Spokes, before we go to that one last question from STG before we wrap things up.
For sure. Just a couple of things. I wanted to say that Lutte Internationale was one of those companies that also did talent sharing with a couple other companies. They worked with Vern Gagne's AWA, and that's where you saw people like Hulk Hogan and a few other stars, Nick Bockwinkel, Baron von Raschke, guys like that coming up. And then also them borrowing some Quebecois stars such as the Bachons and and Rick Martel and a few other names. But Montreal also had a nice relationship with Puerto Rico, which we just talked about a few weeks ago on the last trip through the territories with Astrid. They had a deal with the WWC, so they started trading talent with them. So now you're getting Abdullah the Butcher coming up to Montreal. You're getting King Tonga. You're getting Hercules Ayala and some of the other big stars from Puerto Rico, including some of the other stars that just work there too, such as the Bruiser Brodies. And now the fans weren't sure if they liked the hardcore style or a little bit more hardcore style that came with the Puerto Rican wrestlers. So that was kind of sort of part of the downfall that started to happen. They had to change their model a little bit in competing with Vince and the WWF at that time. And then I wanted to say that as the downfall started in 85 and 86, the same thing happened with this territory as we've talked about with all the other territories. Vince wanted it. He came in, he said, I'll work with you guys. Let's get wrestling even more developed in Montreal. Let's do some cross promotional shows. So he started out being generous towards them. Here we can use Hulk Hogan and we'll bring Andre back up there and we'll bring some of our big stars in. Well, let's work the Montreal Forum, the big building. Now, to anyone who doesn't know this building, the Montreal Forum is the home of the Montreal Canadiens hockey team. So it's a holy building. It's Canada's Madison Square Garden, so to speak. It's one of the very, very most holy of venues in Canada. Vince said, let's work it together. Let's do some big shows. I'll let your Quebec guys go over cleanly on some of my WWF stars, and we'll build something here. And this was great to hear for the promoters of Lutte Internationale, because now they can work with the big guys, not compete with them, and get some real big eyes and big money on our product. But of course, it's Vince McMahon, and he didn't mean it at all. He was just learning the lay of the land. So what he did was, once they worked together a couple times, he canceled their last shows. He took their venues, including the Montreal Forum. He took their TV deal, and then he had been looking at their roster, and he took whoever he wanted. The Rougeau brothers, young, awesome talent with tons of potential in front of them. Rick Martel, the Vachons, and anybody else he wanted. So he left them basically destitute. And from 85 and 86, they lasted till 1987, and then the town was dead. Whatever wrestling fans there were left there watched it on TV and waited for the WWF to come to town, just like all those other territories. I say it with a tear in my eye because what a great thing they had going there, but you can't fight the big money from New York and the big machine that Vince had going. He was going to just take everything from all the territories, and Montreal was no different.
Exactly. It is sad, but I'm glad that we were able to do a lot covering the territory here, and hopefully we did it some justice. Papa Smokes, I do want to go quickly back to this question from STG where he asked, do you guys remember the first house wrestling show that you went to? Have you traveled to cities to watch their house product? First house show for me was a house show here in Saskatoon. It was around the time of WrestleMania 8. Yes, it would have been around the time of WrestleMania 8. So we did have one of the Macho Man Ric Flair matches on the card. I believe that both were there doing a matchup at the show here in Saskatoon because that was the matchup that took place at WrestleMania. It was either prior to the WrestleMania or it was shortly after WrestleMania. If I'm honest, I can't quite remember the time frame of where it was at, but it would have been in there that I saw my first one. Then I got hooked on going to the house shows. I've been to the vast majority of them that come here. As for travel, not so much for house shows. I traveled once to Edmonton to go see Backlash in 2005. And then when I was out in Edmonton this summer, saw an indie show while I was there. That's for me anyway, but how about yourself, Papa Smokes?
I remember the first house show I went to in Winnipeg, and it was Vern Gagne's AWA. I was pretty young, and I wish I could get my hands on my programs. I think they're at my mom's place back in Manitoba, and I could remember this for sure, but I know the first one I went to was in the very early 80s, and the main event was Sheikh Adnan Al-Kaisi, also known as General Adnan for people of WWE-centric. Sheikh Adnan Al-Kaisi and Jerry Blackwell against the High Flyers, Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell in the main event. I know there was a ladies match on that was the Glamour Girls, Judy Martin and Joyce Grable. They had a match. That's classic ladies wrestling. And I remember the first wrestler in the first match that came out that I saw, because I'd watched this on TV, but I wasn't sure what to expect live. But the first guy was the Golden Greek, John Tolos. who was a huge star in LA, used to wrestle with Bobo Brazil and Freddie Blassie and Gene LaBelle and all those guys. Was involved in some huge money feuds. I didn't know that back then. He was at the end of his career at that time, but I always get a kick out of that there was quite a famous American wrestler in the very first match I ever saw live.
Fantastic. No, it was a great question, STG. Glad you were able to ask it, and appreciate you doing that, classy Freddie Blassie. But yeah, no, thank you for the question, STG. Yeah, we did a whole episode on him as well too. Go check that out sometime if you got time. But Papa Smokes, while we're rocking and rolling, cost me some money, and check out that beautiful ticker down below and let the people know where they can find you.
All right, everybody. I can always be found at Elon Musk's free speech wonderland known as X. I am at smokes_papa. I also lurk on Twitch sometimes and watch some stuff at there. I'm at papa_smokes_.
Fantastic. And as for myself, Bobby Munson, you can follow me on the X at Real Bobby Munson. Instagram and Threads, it's at Video Bros SK, Twitch, Video Bro _Bobby Munson. And on Blue Sky, look up Bobby Munson over there. You will find me, and you will be able to find out where I'm at next. But I can give you a quick rundown of that this Sunday. Join me for Point of View, where we're going to be talking the week in sport. You can join me and Papa Smokes over at the Prairie Pro Wrestling Channel Saturday afternoon with a new match coming out. And it's a big one this time, Papa Smokes. The PPW Championship is on the line. Sheik Akbar Shabazz defending against Michael Allen Richard Clark. Yes, it's going to be huge. Make sure you tune in into that as well, too. And like we said, we may just go ahead and do a little pre-record and give you guys an extra Ring Respect Radio so that we can also cover the MLW Battle Riot this Saturday as well, too. So lots coming up from us. Remember to join us next Thursday night here on Ring Respect Radio. We're going to be joined by the other voice of Prairie Pro Wrestling, Mr. J.G. Muller is going to be in the house, followed by us doing our review of SPW's Battle for Gold, where, our boy James Shaw is in that main event, Papa Smokes. Going to be interesting to be able to talk to you all about that match full of great stuff. Yes, there may be an extra STG. Hang tight. It will be a pre-record, but you know where you can always find it right here on OLE Podcast. OLE Podcast across all social media as well as YouTube and Twitch at our local establishment. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Turn on the notification bell so you know when we release new material from all the great contributors we have from around the globe. We want to thank you for tuning in to another trip through the territories. Hang tight. Stay tuned because coming right up, it's the Honor Ramble. Join Kyle Sparks and Sam tonight as they are going to give you the latest on everything Ring of Honor. So stay tuned to that. That's going to be it for myself and Papa Smokes. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in a week's time. Take care.